welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender Ed, Blender HD. You want to follow me on Twitter? And it's Friday, January 20th, and you know what time it is? It's Fighting Friday. We're fighting. We're not fighting, but they're going to be fighters tomorrow. They're down in Brazil for the UFC pay-per-view, and we'll be talking about that on today's show. The only free MMA content I believe we have here at RotoGrinders. If you want the premium stuff, subscribe to RotoGrinders Combo Premium. You get the MMA, you get the NBA, you get the NFL, the playoff stuff. We got all the playoff stuff. We got MLB when that comes back, soccer, PGA, college basketball, all the projections, all the ownership, all the premium shows, the premium content, the articles, everything. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. We had Mike H3 Buddha and Liam doing the premium MMA podcast. They'll be out today. They break down all the fights. We have the expert survey. We got Liam's fight breakdowns and betting picks and everything you need for this pay-per-view. 15 fights. It's a big card. It's a big damn card, and there probably will be a lot of finishes. So we'll talk about that in a second. Good morning to the chat. Wataz here early. Suki Singh is apparently dead. Is he on vacation? Typically, those are the two early birds. Wataz and Suki Singh. I don't know. Wataz has to reach out to Suki and see what's going on. Defix here. Kickstart Trevor. Matt Mears. The regulars are here. Hit that thumbs up button. You know how much I like the thummy thumbs in the morning. This MMA card. Remember last week we didn't do Fighting Friday because I wasn't playing that slate because of the Rainmakers editions. It wasn't very good. It was 11 fight card anyway. So my policy typically is that if I'm not playing the slate, I'm not going to break it down. I'm not going to, because if I'm not putting money on it, I don't know. This is what I would do, but I have $0 on it. I don't know. I'm kind of a stickler like that. Like I need to have action in some fashion if I'm gonna dole out my strategic advice. But I am playing tomorrow. I'm playing 8 lineups. Remember, now with late swap, I'm focusing more on the smaller field contests. The $555, the $200 3 max, the $100 single entry, stuff like that, the qualifiers, those types of contests, because I think there's more of an edge in late swap in those. The $25 large field, you're still pretty much going to have to find the nuts, right? So late swap maybe not as important. And Ryan Moth asks, am I not doing the pod with Liam and Mike? No, not anymore. I'll come on every once in a blue moon. Once in a blue moon, I'll be on. My Thursday nights are now occupied, so it's hard. It's hard for me to find the time to record. That's why I still do this show, right? That's why I still do Friday mornings on the DFS pregame show, the MMA breakdown, more from a strategic standpoint, not necessarily a fight breakdown standpoint. So if you got any questions about the UFC card tomorrow, let me know in the YouTube chat. If you got any questions about DFS strategy in general, remember, other than Fridays when there's a UFC card, I answer all your DFS strategy questions. I try to build up a whole bunch of questions, and then once I see things on a certain topic, then I start going over those topics. So submit your questions at theoryofdfs.com. I answered them all. Okay? Either I write back to you, I answer it on the show, and if I answer it on the show, even if it's 2 weeks from now, I will always email you back saying, hey, you should check out the show today because I covered it, just in case you've forgotten. We have the titles now on all the episodes, so if you want to find something in the past about a certain subject, it's much more easier to find. And yes, Grant Brown says occupied with poker. Yes, playing poker on Thursday nights now, right? So don't have the time. Had a good night last night. You saw on my Twitter. Luga85 asked about NFL DFS. Yeah, there'll be NFL shows later today on the channel, on the YouTube channel. They have a whole bunch of the Blitz shows coming out, tournament takes, I guess. I mean, there'll be plenty of DFS NFL stuff for the main slate for NFL. FanDuel, if you could play on FanDuel. I don't know if you're using the desktop. FanDuel isn't working very well on the desktop. App isn't that bad. But yeah, so there'll be all that NFL stuff. Obviously, you get the projections, you get the ownership, get everything premium-wise here at RotoGrinders by signing up. But the UFC card tomorrow is a doozy. It's a doozy. 15 fights. Okay, so let's look at the contextual variables, right? We talk about contextual variables. We talk about archetypes, like I talk about in the the theory of DFS, right? In the advanced course, talk about archetypes of a slate. Okay. So on a large card for MMA, right? Sometimes we get these like 10 fight cards, or like last week, 11 fight. That's kind of a smaller one. Remember, there aren't that many options in UFC DFS, right? We have 30 this week. So if you're playing large field, I mean, a lot of the consideration is, around duplication, either full lineup or combinatorial duplication. On a 15 fight card, obviously there are way more combos that you could use, right? So duplication will be lower. Doesn't mean it is. That, certain lineups may still be very high owned, but for the most part, there are going to be more available combos for you to make. Okay? So from a duplication standpoint, especially if you're playing small field, you may not even have to worry that much about it. But also in the context of how the salaries and the lines of the fights are. We have a lot of large favorites on the slate. We have Jelton Almeida at minus 1,000 at 9,700. So at 9,700, he needs to be a top 6 fighter. The highest price fighter must be a top 6 fighter to make the optimal lineup. And he is probably the highest chance of putting up 100 plus points. But at 9,700, if he puts up 105, that may not be good enough, right? So understand the contextual variables of the slate. We got Josiane Nunes at minus 550, Andrade at minus 490, Gilbert Burns minus 485, Cody Stamann minus 330, Gregory Rodriguez minus 310, Thiago Moses minus 360. These are big favorites. On any other card, one like Thiago Moses at minus 360 could be the $9,500 fighter, the biggest, the most expensive fighter on the slate. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got like 6, 7 of them on the slate. And then we got a lot of like more closer to the pick'em level, right? But also on top of that, we got, look at these inside the distance lines. I mean, even in the mid-range, right? Because Almeida's minus 470. That's an 82% implied probability with the VIG, obviously. Not a no VIG probability. Josiane Nunes, 60%. Andrade, 51. Burns, 55. Rodriguez, 67. Moises, 45. Pateria, 55. Johnny Walker at 8,700 is 58%. Terrence McKinney, 51% at 8,500. Jamal Hill, we have the both main events are mid-range fights. So both 5-round fights, both championship fights are mid-range, which means that, from a floor perspective, like you are most probably stacking. I mean, like in cash games or something like that, it wouldn't be behoove to stack both of them. You probably stack one. You probably stack the Figueiredo Moreno fight in cash, and then you pick one of Hill or Teixeira, and then you build your lineup around. You play Almeida, and then you figure it out from there. That would be like the cash lineup in MMA for tomorrow. So we have all these large favorites. We have high ITDs. I mean, even in the lower level, like we have in the underdog, out of the underdogs, we have Dalby plus 195, Teixeira plus 170, Ismael Bonfim is plus 140 at 7,700. Paul Craig and Daniel Marcos are still in the 30s percentage-wise. I mean, like a lot of times we don't get plus 200s around there, like in this price range. So a lot of these fights are predicted from a probabilistic standpoint of ending inside the distance. A lot of fights to target, a lot of fighters to target, and not many and really, you take a look, most of the underdogs are fairly hefty underdogs. So what's the context? What's the archetype of this type of slate? Okay, when we have a lot of big favorites, 9K plus big favorites, big, inside the distance lines, not many underdogs. The context is that in most likelihood, more likely than not, the winning lineup or the optimal lineup is going to spend most of the salary, right? It's not going to. It doesn't predict from a probabilistic standpoint. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but most likely the winning lineup in GPPs is going to be a 49.5 plus type of lineup. It's not going to be one of those lineups that leaves 1,500, 2,000 on the table. It's quite possible that out of these like 9K guys, like of these favorites with these like 50+% ITD lines, that we get multiple 100+ point fighters. Maybe multiple plus 120 Maybe we get 3 fighters that score over 120 on this slate. Which ones? Well, you got to pick the right ones. And we may not get any underdogs that put up a big score. Maybe none. Hey, this may be a slate where none of the underdogs win, even though there's 15 fights. Maybe we get 1 or 2 underdogs. And obviously, to make a lineup on DraftKings, you have to play an underdog. Like, there's no way not to. And if you want to pay up for some of these 9K fighters, you're going to have to play at least one of the lower priced underdogs. So I think on this type of slate, like, you're prioritizing, like, jamming in high upside. You should be going for wins on a 15-fight card. That's why I said, like, Cody Stamann sticks out like a sore thumb here at 9,200. Like, he'll be lower owned. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the lowest owned 9K fighter. But his ITD line of plus 305, right? Against, who is he fighting? Luan Lacerda? Like, it's just pales in comparison to some of these others. I mean, it's like, it's half, a third as much as some of these other guys. And it's not like you can play all these other guys also. So it's not like the type of thing. If Cody Stamann was on an 11-fight card and we had like 2 other 9K guys that have good ITD lines, it's like, oh, well, instead of playing both of those, I'll play Cody Stamann instead. It's like, no, Cody Stamann has to beat out like all these other guys. Like other than one, right? If like Gilbert Burns puts up a big score, like you have Burns and Stamann, but it's like, well, they have to beat out Almeida and Nunes and Andrade and Rodriguez and Moises and Pateria and Walker and McKinney and Jamal Hill. I mean, like, that plus 305, I don't care. He's a minus 360 favorite. It just, he's not projected to score. This fight most likely goes the distance. I'm more likely to play Luan Lacerda against him. Because maybe a decision win at 7K is good enough. And maybe one of those slates where an underdog that wins is good with 80 or 90 points is good enough, right? Because we may get a lot of big scores out of the top range, and you just need like that 190-point underdog just to fit in 3 guys from up here in this range. So those are the types of lineup constructions I'm looking for. I want to jam in like probably 2 9K level players, level fighters, probably someone in the mid-range, or 2 in the mid-range, 3 in the mid-range, and kind of pick out like one guy on the bottom half to be the guy that puts up like 90 points. Now, based on the ownership that we have RG ownership up, and that'll be updated. Moneyball will update probably that tomorrow morning as well. From a chalk standpoint, Almeida, obviously chalky, but he's 9,700. Understand what Almeida lineups look like. Almeida lineups will have to play like pretty much someone down here. Like, they're going to have to take shots on Melquizael Costa or, like something like that. Like down in the bottom end. Now, Jael Almeida is, I can't see him not just absolutely crushing Shamil Abdurakhimov. Shamil is what, like 40-plus years old, and he lasts like 2 minutes in the octagon. I mean, most of his fights end in 2 minutes with him getting knocked out. It's hard to see that not happening with Jael Almeida. Just a matter of how many points he scores in the process. But then you got guys like chalk-wise, like Gregory Rodriguez. 32. I have him at 32. We have him at 29. He'll probably come around 30. Minus 205 inside the distance at 9,100. Pretty good. But I think his opponent, Bruno Ferreira, set 7,100. 7,100, he has a plus 330 inside the distance. That is not bad. That's pretty good for that price. Plus, this is in Brazil, this UFC pay-per-view, and so a lot of these fighters are, I know Bruno Ferreira is a newcomer. He's on shorter notice, not like this week. But he's a Brazilian fighter with wrestling background and a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And Gregory Rodriguez has, questionable cardio, questionable fight IQ. He's gotten knocked out cold before. He typically, a lot of times he's out striking when he should be wrestling. And also, he doesn't face that many wrestlers. So as far as an underdog pick for leverage, I have Bruno Ferreira. If he's going to come in at like 12% owned, I have him as under-owned, but I mean, not to by that much. He probably should be like more like 16 or 17% owned. And he's going to be facing someone that's going to be like 30+% owned. I expect the common constructions will have Almeida, Rodriguez, Johnny Walker, McKinney, right? And then like main event fighters, obviously, like both sides of both main events, both championship fights. I think that's kind of the construction. And if you need an underdog, I think maybe like Munir Lazez or Paul Craig, Daniel Marcos, kind of like people will try to like fit in there, even in the non-Almeida lineups. Like if you don't play Almeida, then you may not have to go lower than like Lazez at 7,400. Or maybe you're playing Luan Lacerda against Stamen. I don't know how that much upside there is there, but a decision win for 70, 80 points, that's possible. People play like Ismail Bonfim. He has a plus 140 for 7,700, right? I have him at 27%, right? But that's kind of semi-mid-range. But the fighters that I'm looking at compared to ownership is that, not many people are going to play like these two women, 500, 9,400, Nunes and Andrade. But I mean, their matchups are like cupcake matchups. I mean, Nunes could easily just knock the hell out of Zarafane. And Lauren Murphy may put up a fight for a round. I mean, but I see Andrade just crushing her. So maybe those are the fights. Maybe you pick one of those. But I mean, they'll be like, I could see them being like 20-ish% owned. But then you have guys like Gilbert Burns. I have Gilbert Burns under owned at 18%. That he probably should be 22 to 24%. And he's up against Neil Magny. And typically a lot of like longtime UFC DFS players don't like playing the guys against Neil Magny because Magny is not a bad fighter and typically, is durable enough to last. And Gilbert Burns is probably more of a ground threat, and Magny ain't bad with the submission defense, right? But also Gilbert Burns could come out. And, I mean, it's in Brazil. That's why I said I'm like, when in doubt, if you see the Brazilian flag on your Draftkings screen, and you're like on a 50-50, take the Brazilian flag, take the home field advantage, maybe. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at like Nunes, Andrade, Burns, right? Maybe fade Rodriguez. I mean, you could put him in lineups, yeah, but I mean, you're gonna have to find, chalk to fade elsewhere. I have Ihor Pateria as underowned. He's facing Shogun Rua, obviously a big name, right? Mauricio Rua, but I mean, he's old. He's past his prime. Slow as hell. Pateria can knock him out, right? I mean, this fight is like boom or bust. Like Pateria Rua, like if 5 minutes go by and they enter the second round, you ain't scoring good, right? This is like first round or bust type of stuff, but it doesn't seem like the field is going that much there, especially at 8,900. I'm not sure how owned Pateria is going to be. I have him at 20, but I wouldn't be shocked if someone gets a first round knockout in this fight. Then you have Johnny Walker as a nice inside the distance line at 8,700 facing Paul Craig. But of course, Paul Craig, I mean, Paul Craig has lucked out submissions many countless times. I don't consider Johnny Walker to be that great, but I mean, Paul Craig also has he absorbs 8 million strikes. I mean, like Paul Craig is on the feet against Johnny Walker, probably gets, you're gonna see a lot of damage. He takes a lot of damage. But if he could get Walker to the ground, I mean, Paul Craig could win this fight. I think the floor is low. Obviously, Walker is more of a, stand-up striker. So it's like, is he going to have that much upside from a ground game? No. So I think Walker will be popular because of his price. I mean, it's more of a price play. He's in the mid-range, and he's a nice inside the distance line. And you can say the same with Terrence McKinney. I think that the McKinney-Bonfim fight, the Ismail Bonfim, not Gabriel Bonfim fight, I think that's another one to target. But understand, like, McKinney-Ismail Bonfim is like, once it goes past 5 minutes, you're done. Right? You ain't going to score 100 points, probably. Right? McKinney's more of a first round or bust, stand-up striker. Ismail Bonfim, Kind of similar, right? I mean, look at these inside the distance lines in one fight. Minus 105 and plus 140. This fight is the most likely to end inside the distance. So taking one side of here, especially in the mid-range, right? It's $8,500, $7,700 fight. I'll probably side more with the underdog, especially if I'm trying to fit in these kind of contrarian 9K picks in. And then we have like the main events, the 2 5-round fights. If you go back and study like all of the DraftKings slates ever where there's been 2 5-round fights, predominantly the optimal lineup has a winning fighter from 1, but not necessarily 2. Some 2, but mostly 1. Very rarely 0. Okay? And on this slate, both these fights are in the mid-range. Jamal Hill, 8,400. Glover Teixeira, 7,800. Devson Figueiredo, 8,200. Brandon Moreno, 8,000. These are 5-round fights. I mean, if the Figueiredo-Moreno fight, especially, if it goes 5 rounds, it's hard not to see one of them scoring 90. Is that going to be enough on this slate, though? It's quite possible it's not that 90 at 8K isn't enough. It's quite possible that 7,800 Glover Teixeira, 3rd-round submission win for 96 points. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe it isn't. From a floor perspective, I love this range. The 5-round fight's great. Am I going to get frisky and have 0 of either fight? I don't know. It feels like that would be plus EV. It feels like it, but also high variance. Now, I'm playing smaller field stuff, so I think I'm going to have 1 5-round fighter in all my lineups. I don't think I don't need to score the optimal and have the most amount of leverage by playing lineups with 0 of them. But I'm going to avoid having two, playing a Jamal Hill, Brandon Moreno lineup. Like that type of thing. Because you're going to just get led into so many other fighters. And you're going to, combinatorically, your ownership is going to be very tied to other fighters. Even in small field. In large field, I think, feel free to take some shots on lineups that have no 5-round fighters in it. It's a 15-fight card. 11-fight card, yeah, it's hard to avoid it. But now that we have more fights, and especially ones that could put up 120 points, even in the mid-range. Let's say Jamal Hill goes out and knocks out Glover Teixeira in the 2nd round and scores 95 points for 8,400. Well, what happens if McKinney just goes out and knocks out Ismail Bonfim in the 1st round and scores 110? Like, okay, Jamal Hill ain't going to be in the optimal lineup anymore. Right? There's going to be a lot of look at these lines. A lot of finishes. That's what it seems like. This is ridiculous. A lot of big favorites and a lot of big ITD lines. So I ain't playing guys. I ain't playing Stamen or Worley Alves. I ain't playing guys with that limited finishing ability. Except if they're like low-priced underdogs. Because I don't, based on the betting lines, I don't want to say I think, but based on the betting lines, the winning lineup tomorrow in GPPs is most likely 49.5 plus, close to 50K, and only contains like 1 winning underdog. Contains the only 2 winning underdogs on the entire slate. That's the only way you could fit in everyone. Like, that's the most likely occurrence. But you'll still see plenty of people leaving $1,800 in salary. I think that's a mistake, even in large field. I think it's just getting the right combinations. Because you have all these fighters to choose from. You know how many combinations you can make of Almeida, Nunes, Andrade, Burns, Rodriguez, Moises, Pateria, Gabriel Bonfim, Walker. I mean, like there's so many combos. Even spending and like 49.5 plus. And then you just have to get the one like underdog right. Like if Benin Lazez wins, like that may be optimal. Luan Lacerda wins. If Bruno Ferreira wins. Lauren Murphy pulls it out against Jessica Andrade and scores 85 points at 6,800. That may be in the optimal line. I don't like, the underdogs from a statistical standpoint and a betting line perspective aren't very good. They aren't very good. Is this the type of slate where you leave 2K on the table? I can't see how you could possibly do that. Of course, I say that, and then you get 17 underdogs win tomorrow. I don't think. Look at these lines on my spreadsheet. It's ridiculous. But yeah, according to my spreadsheet right now with ownership, which I will be updating tomorrow morning, from an under-owned perspective, under-owned based on projection, based on ceiling, based on inside the distance lines, based on win, based on all of these factors. Jelna Maeda is going to be like 40% owned, and I still think he's going to be under-owned. It's just a matter of, does he put up enough points at 9,700 to be optimal? But actually, I have Josian Nunez under-owned. I have Josian Nunez under-owned at 21%. I have Gilbert Burns under-owned at 18%. I have Ihor Pateria under-owned at 20%. Right? I have Nicholas Dalby in the 7,900 range, right around those main event fighters, plus 195 inside the distance. I have him as under-owned at 13%. If he comes in at 13. I have Paul Craig under-owned at 16. I've even Shogun Rua at like 13. I have him a bit under-owned. Probably should be more like 15 or 16. And I have Bruno Ferreira. Like, to me, if I were to choose an underdog to play, it's Bruno Ferreira. Like that's going to be my underdog. In my 8 lineups, I may have him in 4 of them. Leverage off of Gregory Rodriguez, who will be popular. Plus 330 inside the distance, 7,100. Has a ceiling, has grappling. Submissions. He could score points on DraftKings. And I have him as under-owned at 12%. He probably should be closer to 17, 18%. That's what I have as under-owned. Over-owned, I have the Figueiredo Moreno. Basically both 5-round fights. I pretty much have over-owned, especially the Figueiredo Moreno fight. Figueiredo at 31%, Moreno at 38%. I have as over-owned. It's unlikely to end inside the distance. That's why. Jamal Hill. The Hill Teixeira fight is like slightly less than efficiently owned. So it's slightly over-owned. Slightly, but not that much. If Cody Staman's going to be 11%, I actually have him as over-owned at 11%. If he ends up being 6%, that's a different story. But like even at 11%, I'm the person that's like, oh, the 9K fighter no one's going to play. I'll play him for leverage. There's so many other. I could play Gilbert Burns with like more than twice the likelihood of winning inside the distance. So why not just do that? That's what I'm looking at here. Over-owned underdogs. Like I have Munir Lazez over-owned at 18%. Let's see. Anyone else that's like really sticks out? Obviously, like if Abdurakhima, like even like Shamil at like even 4% owned, maybe over-owned. Zara Farron, this girl facing Josian Nunez, I have it 9% in over-owned. Lauren Murphy, Neil Magny at 8%, a little bit over-owned. Luan Lacerda at 13%, I have over-owned. Probably should be 10. A lot of stuff in the middle is give or take. Nothing that stands out completely. Probably Jamal Hill. Yeah, well, I talked about the Hill Teixeira fight. McKinney, I need to really weigh down what the ownership is going to be. I have him at 27%. But that's around efficient. It's about efficiently owned. But yeah, I'm gonna be building lineups that are gonna go up and down. Probably play someone like if I go to the MMA builder, let's see. What type of lineup am I gonna build? Something with like Bruno Ferreira. There you go. So you got a $7,100 fighter there. Maybe we get Ismail Bonfim against McKinney. Something like that. Right? We got 8,800 remaining salary. Right? I take one main event fighter. Maybe I take Jamal Hill. Is that going to be good? Jamal Hill, 89.3. Something like this. Like I'm looking through. Maybe we could even take Shisher, right? Or take Moreno, or take whatever. Okay, take Brandon Moreno, 90.67. Take Dalby, right? And now we have 96.50. Now we could do Almeida and Nunes, right? There you go. Done. Ferreira, Bonfim, Ismail Bonfim, Moreno, Dalby, Almeida, Nunes. If you don't want to play that, you could always go like Jamal Hill instead of Almeida, and you have 9,400, and you could play Andrade or Gilbert Burns or something like that. Like, these are what my lineups are going to kind of look like. That's what I'm aiming for. Take one bigger underdog. Take like kind of 3 in the mid-range, in the lower mid-range, and then 2 9K fighters. And hopefully I get the right 2K. Hopefully I get the right 2 9K fighters. Right, if I have a lineup that doesn't have Almeida in it, I'm just going to go, okay, I hope Almeida just finishes him 1 minute and 5 seconds in with a submission and scores like 97 points. Or something like that. And then if I have Almeida, like, dude, just knock him out in 13 seconds. Go for it. Go for it, dude. You're a beast. But I think this is more of the lineup construction that I'm going for. And if I don't play Ferreira down here, maybe I play a Lacerda. Maybe I take a shot on Shogun. That's so tough. Huh. But I don't think I touch Magny, Murphy, Farron, and Abdul-Rahim. I don't think I just X them out. Maybe Lacerda is the lowest I go. Yeah, I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions? If you got any questions, put them in the YouTube chat before we get out of here. We got a lot of content. A lot of content on the channel today. NFL playoffs, NBA, Grinders Live, and Crunch Time later today. They'll be taking care of you. 5 o'clock Eastern, 6:30 Eastern, leading up to another wonderful NBA DFS slate. And as usual, right, outside of Fridays, I answer your DFS strategy questions, so send them in. Questions at theoryofdfs.com. On anything you want, anything. I'll answer them all. And if you want to learn more about contextual variables and archetypes, how do you view a slate? Like, how did I know that it's more likely that this slate is going to be more like 49.5 plus type of lineups? More likely to be very high scoring type of lineups, right? By the slate size, by the slate dynamic, by the salary structure. You could judge that and learn about all those contextual variables in the theory of DFS for advanced players, which includes custom Excel tools designed by James McCool. So you could pick that up, theoryofdfs.com. Hit that thumbs up button, the thummy thumbs on your way out the door, and I'll be back. I'll be back on Monday because I'm here every weekday answering your questions about DFS strategy on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.